The night was unnaturally quiet. Only the rustling of pine needles and the occasional hoot of an owl broke the silence of the deep forest. Orion Vale moved carefully through the undergrowth, his flashlight cutting thin silver beams through the mist. He wasn't supposed to be out this far. Ravenwood Forest had been closed off by the local authorities for weeks. Strange meteorological activity, they'd said. But to Orion, a reclusive wildlife photographer, strange meant interesting. He was following a trail of iridescent sap droplets that shimmered faintly even in the dark. They led downhill toward a clearing he'd never seen before, though he'd lived near these woods all his life. The air hummed softly, like the vibration of a distant engine. Then he saw it, an indentation in the ground like a crash site. Trees had been scorched, their bark still smoking faintly. And at the center of it lay something, or someone, wrapped in torn silver fabric that caught the light like liquid metal. Orion froze. It was a girl. She looked human at first glance, but the closer he got, the more he realized she wasn't. Her skin had a faint bluish shimmer beneath the pale moonlight. Her hair flowed like white silk that seemed to glow from within, and faint geometric markings traced along her arms, patterns that pulsed gently, almost like veins of light. She was breathing, shallowly but alive. Hey, it's okay," Orion whispered, kneeling beside her. "You're hurt. I'll get you help." Her eyes fluttered open. They were an impossible shade of violet, too bright to be natural. She tried to speak, but only a series of clicks and soft tones came out, like music played backwards. Then suddenly her voice shifted, reshaping itself into words he could understand. "Don't call anyone," she whispered. "They will come for me." "Who?" "You need medical help." "No." Her grip on his wrist was surprisingly strong. "You cannot let them find me." Then her hand went limp, and she lost consciousness. Part 2: The Refuge. Orion hesitated only a moment before wrapping her in his old canvas jacket and carrying her to his cabin a mile away. It wasn't much, just a single-room wood stove generator, but it was safe. He laid her on his couch and examined her wounds. A long gash along her shoulder, but it wasn't bleeding like a normal wound. It was leaking a faintly luminescent blue fluid. He used gauze, bandages, and every bit of first aid training he had to stop the flow. Hours passed. The girl slept fitfully, murmuring in that strange musical language. When she finally woke, the first thing she did was sit up sharply, scanning the room like an animal ready to bolt. "You are not one of them," she said, her voice more stable now. "Where am I?" "My cabin," Orion said, keeping his tone gentle. "You crashed in the forest. I brought you here. Who are you?" She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "You would not believe me if I told you. Try me." She hesitated, then spoke softly. "My name is Sarai. I am from Elora, another world far from this one. My vessel was attacked. It escaped. But I cannot stay hidden long. The pursuers will track the energy signature." Orion blinked, struggling to process that. "You're an alien." Her expression tightened. "If that is your word for it, yes." He stared at her markings, her luminous eyes, the faint hum that seemed to radiate from her body. Every instinct told him it was impossible, but the evidence said otherwise. "Then why are they after you?" he asked. Sarai hesitated, then said quietly, "Because I am not just anyone from Elora. I am heir to the Luminar throne. My people call me the Star Queen. And I have something they want, a key. If they retrieve it, my world will fall, and yours may follow." She reached into the torn remains of her suit and withdrew a small crystal device. It was about the size of a pebble, but it radiated light and energy in pulses that seemed alive. Orion felt the air vibrate as she held it. "This," she said, "controls the portals, the bridges between our galaxies. In the wrong hands, it could destroy entire worlds." Orion sat back slowly. "You're saying there are others coming here, after you?" "Yes," she whispered. "And they will not stop." Part 3: The Hunters. The next morning, the forest was no longer quiet. Orion woke to the sound of a low, droning hum that seemed to reverberate through the air. Sarai was already up, standing by the window. "They are here," she said. Through the trees, faint lights moved, pulsing red and blue, scanning patterns through the fog. Drones or something far more advanced. He grabbed his binoculars. What he saw made his stomach tighten. Sleek, metallic figures gliding silently between the trees, like shadows made of glass. "They are hunters," Sarai said. "Machines bound to the will of the usurper, my cousin Kale. He believes the throne should be his." Orion's mind raced. "Then we need to hide. Or get out of here." Sarai shook her head. "You cannot outrun light. Then what do we do?" She looked at him with fierce determination. "We fight." Orion wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. He was a photographer with a shotgun and a generator, facing what looked like extraterrestrial assassins. But something in her eyes, ancient, regal, defiant, made him nod. "Then we fight." Part 4: The Battle in the Mist. They prepared as best they could. Orion used his knowledge of the terrain, setting up crude traps, using reflective foil and mirrors to scatter the scanners. Sarai, though weakened, began to repair a small piece of her armor, connecting it to the crystal key. As night fell, the first hunter arrived. It glided through the door like liquid metal, humanoid but faceless. Its chest glowed with a faint crimson core. Orion fired the shotgun, but the pellets bounced harmlessly off its surface. Sarai stepped forward, pressing the crystal against her arm. The markings along her body flared to life, and she spoke a word that sounded like a chord of music. A pulse of light erupted from her hand, slamming into the hunter and dissolving it into ash. She staggered. Orion caught her before she fell. "That was one of many," she gasped. He looked out the window. More lights were approaching. The next minutes blurred into chaos. Energy blasts scorched the walls. Orion ducked behind furniture, returning fire uselessly. Sarai fought with growing exhaustion, each burst of light dimmer than the last. Finally, as 3 hunters closed in, Orion grabbed her hand. "This way." They bolted out the back, racing into the forest. The mist swallowed them. Behind, the cabin exploded in a blinding flash as one of the hunters overloaded its core. They ran until Orion's lungs burned. Finally, Sarai collapsed near the stream. Her light was fading. "I can't keep running," she whispered. "If Kale's hunters find us, the key will be lost." Orion knelt beside her. "Then we make our stand here." Part 5: The Last Light. The final confrontation came at dawn. Kale himself appeared, not in flesh, but as a projection hovering above the clearing. His form was tall, his eyes a cruel silver. "Cousin," his voice echoed, "how far you've fallen. To hide among primitives." Sarai lifted her head weakly. "You are no ruler. You are a conqueror. History will decide," Kale sneered. "Give me the key, and perhaps I'll let this creature live." Orion stepped forward before she could answer. "She's not giving you anything." Kale turned his gaze on him, amused. A human defending a queen of the stars. How poetic. The ground trembled. 4 hunters emerged around them. Sarai clutched the key, her body trembling. "If I destroy it, the portals collapse," she said softly. "No one can cross between worlds again." "What happens to you?" Orion asked, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I will not survive the backlash." He shook his head. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," she whispered. "But you have given me something my people could not hope." Before he could stop her, she pressed the crystal to her heart. A sound like thunder and music filled the air at once. Light erupted from her body, blinding and pure. The hunters disintegrated. Kale's image shattered like glass. Orion was thrown backward, landing hard against the forest floor. When the light faded, the clearing was still. Sarai was gone. Only a faint shimmer of starlight lingered in the air, like dust suspended in time. And in his palm, where the key had been, lay a single crystal shard, dark, inert, but warm to the touch. Part 6: The Return. Weeks passed. The authorities investigated the meteor event again, blaming it on natural causes. Orion gave no statements. The forest regrew. But sometimes at night, he'd see faint blue lights weaving through the trees, as if the stars themselves had come down to walk among the roots. He kept the shard on his desk, next to his camera. One night, as he was reviewing his photographs from before the crash, the shard began to glow again, faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. A holographic image formed above it. Frey, smiling. "If you can see this," her voice said, "then my essence endures. The portals are closed, but someday when your people are ready, the key will awaken again. Thank you, Orion Vale, for showing me the kindness of your world." Then the light faded once more. Orion sat in silence, the forest wind whispering outside. He didn't know if he'd ever see her again or if she was truly gone, but he knew one thing. The universe was larger, stranger, and more beautiful than he'd ever imagined. And out there among the stars, a queen remembered him. Orion sat in silence long after the hologram faded, the echo of her voice lingering in the cabin like a forgotten melody. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it the same hum he'd heard the night she fell from the sky. He stepped out into the clearing where it had all begun. The forest had healed. No more burn marks, no sign of the crash, but the air still shimmered faintly under the moonlight. He tilted his head back, staring at the constellations overhead. Somewhere among them, he thought, was her world. He remembered the look in her eyes, the quiet strength, the sadness, the gratitude. A queen who carried the weight of galaxies, yet still thanked a single human who chose compassion over fear. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the crystal shard. It pulsed softly, like it recognized him. When he lifted it toward the sky, it glowed brighter, projecting a thin beam of light upward, straight into the stars. For a moment, the heavens seemed to answer. The constellations shimmered, rearranging just slightly, forming a brief outline of a woman, her hair like flowing starlight. Then it faded, leaving only the vast, eternal sky. Orion smiled faintly. "Goodbye, Sarai," he whispered. "Or, maybe just see you later." He turned back toward the forest trail. The world suddenly felt bigger, filled with secrets waiting to be found, stories hidden in the light of distant suns. He didn't know if the portals would ever open again. He didn't know if humanity was ready for what lay beyond. But he knew this. When the stars called again, he would be there to answer. Because once, in the heart of a dark forest, he had met a queen from another world, and she had taught him that even across galaxies, compassion could bridge everything. As dawn broke over the trees, the first rays of sunlight touched the shard in his hand. For an instant it shimmered, not blue but gold, like the morning itself was bowing to her memory. And somewhere light years away, on a world bathed in silver skies, a faint whisper rose among the stars. The queen remembers the man who saved her.